Oral opening statements at the hearing are limited to the chairman and the ranking minority member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3A, or 3O, without objection so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the gentlewoman from Wyoming, Ms. Hageman, and the gentlewoman from Colorado, Ms. Bobert, be allowed to sit and participate in today's hearing, without objection so ordered. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good afternoon, everyone. First off, I want to thank the Department of Interior for showing up today to discuss their contributions to the administration strategy to develop a national system of natural capital accounting. Regrettably, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, the Office of Science and Technology, OSTIP, and the Department of Commerce were not willing to come before the American people and stand behind their work on the national strategy to develop statistics for environmental economic decisions, a U.S. system of natural capital accounting and environmental economic statistics, for short, the National Strategy on Natural Capital Accounting, tongue twister there, which could fundamentally change the management of our public land and water and the environment for years to come. The Department of Commerce refused to testify, but committed to submitting testimony for the record. Well, as of this hearing, the committee hasn't received any testimony from Commerce. They now claim they will send the testimony next week after the hearing, but we'll have to see about that. Don't hold your breath. Overall, it is clear the Biden administration has a complete aversion to accountability. The congressional oversight is not a choice. These bureaucrats in D.C. need a shock to the system because they have forgotten who they really work for, who are the American people. Additionally, this is not the first time OMB has obstructed the committee's oversight efforts. In fact, during the 118th Congress, OMB has refused to discuss any of their work under the jurisdiction of the House Committee on Natural Resources. OMB's repeated refusal to testify sends a clear message from the Biden administration to the American people that we are above the law, above Congress, and accountable to no one. The refusal to testify also allows us to draw the inference that OMB, OSTIP, and the Commerce cannot justify, defend, or even explain this bizarre and radical scheme. The brazen defiance of congressional oversight by OMB, OSTIP, and Commerce is unacceptable. The people deserve transparency and accountability. Regardless, this committee stands ready to use every tool at its disposal to administer effective oversight of OMB, OSTIP, and Commerce, and rein this out-of-control administration in. Now turning to our testimony hearing today. As many of you know, the United States is a resource-rich nation, unlike any other. In many ways, we already account for our nation's many priceless natural assets like minerals, timber, and oil and gas production on federal lands. However, as governments around the world, international organizations, and the private sector attempt to formalize the treatment of natural resources as a form of capital, we must take great care so that a natural capital accounting system will best serve our nation rather than serve as a weapon to achieve partisan goals. I'm also concerned that the United States will defer to international authorities to guide the development and implementation of a national system for natural capital accounting, following standards set by organizations unaccountable to the American people, such as the United Nations, European Union, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Unfortunately, but as expected, the Biden administration plans to use their national strategy for national capital accounting to advance harmful mandates under the guise of climate stewardship, exclusionary and legally impermissible DEI initiatives, and radical anti-use priorities rather than for the benefit of the American people. Notably, the national strategy underpins numerous related initiatives for the Biden administration to include the beautiful 30 by 30 initiative, the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, proposed conservation and landscape health rule, and the recently withdrawn New York Stock Exchange proposal to list national assets companies. The conservation and landscape health rule represents a seismic shift in public land management that will fundamentally upend BLM's multiple use mandate, which has guided land management practice for nearly 50 years. This rule is a threat to rural communities across the West that depend upon the responsible use and development of our public lands. That is why I support H.R. 3397, the West Act, which will withdraw the harmful proposed rule. The Conservation and Landscape Health proposed rule also supports the development of natural asset companies, or NACS, corporations that will control the rights and management authority of certain areas, including public lands, for anti-use purposes. This is particularly concerning due to the massive impact NOx could have on management of federal lands, effective conservation of wildlife habitat, and responsible development of natural resources. As a member of Congress, we must ensure that the ideas endorsed by the national strategy do not become another tool for the out-of-control Biden administration, radical eco-activists and nonprofits, and the international organizations to control America's public lands. As we witnessed over the last 3 years, President Biden is determined to log up public lands and water across the country from a sort of resource development, causing tremendous harm not only to our economy, but to our national security as well. Russia and China are laughing at us as President Biden repeatedly jeopardizes our national security and the security of our great allies in Europe by handicapping vital domestic resource development. We must determine a better path forward for the future of our land management and environment policy for our nation. So I look forward to our conversation today, and I now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Stansberg, for her opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for those who are joining us today. You know, I'm all for oversight of our nation's public lands and conservation policies. I think it's important to